local chapter with our local chapter here in Kansas City for HIMSS. Today I'm going to be introducing Beyond the Buzz, Strategic Thinking and Approaches to AI in Healthcare. We are recording, as you just heard, so please be aware of that as we move forward. As I said, I'm one of the volunteers with our local chapter, but we have several board members who ensure and bring this type of programming and events to our area. And as such, we actually have some of our positions that are becoming available at the end of this year of 2025. So if you are interested to becoming more involved with our local chapter as either a volunteer or a board member, please feel free to reach out to any of these individuals or myself for further information. With that, I would like to take time to thank our ambassador sponsors for the year, Nordic and Pure Storage, as well as we have executive sponsors, uh, Healthcare IT Leaders, Zero and 314. Without the help of these sponsors, we wouldn't be able to bring you programming such as today. Our last in-person event for the year is our annual Boulevard fundraiser. And this year we are going to be benefiting Ability KC. Tickets are what are or will be on sale soon for $40 a person. And knowing that the proceeds from that ticket again goes to benefiting the Ability KC, and it's a great networking event as well. So please come and join us on May 8th from 5:30 to 8:30 p.m. at Boulevard if you're available. With that, I'd like to get into our talk, and I have the great honor and pleasure of being able to introduce our speakers today. John, he is the Strategic Alliance Manager at Pure Storage, and then we also have Bill as well as our second speaker for today. Both of them have strong careers at Pure Storage and will be leading us in our talk. With that, I would like to hand it over.
Well, thanks, Cindy. And I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. But while I do, I think Bill and I would like to just, I'll do a little more in introduction from myself, and I'll ask Bill. One, we're very excited to be here. Bill and I, this is the stuff that we do every day. So giving us a chance to step back from our roles, think about this topic more broadly, and organize our thoughts has been a real treat. So we're looking forward to the discussion. So I've been with Pure for 5 years, but before that, I spent 30 in healthcare. The last 20, the immediate past 20 was actually at SSM Health, based in St. Louis, but 4 states, 30 hospitals, and had 3 roles over those 20 years. Vice President of Clinical Transformation, interim CIO, and a VP of IT Strategy and Planning. So although I've worked for Pure, I spent my entire career really on your side of the fence, heavily involved with the HIMSS, both at the local and national level. So with that, I'll let Bill introduce himself.
Great to meet everybody. Thank you for joining us today. It's a really exciting topic. John and I were at, as he calls it, the World's Fair for AI last week at NVIDIA's GTC conference. So we'll talk a little more about that. But this is a lot of fun for us. My job at Pure Storage, or in my job at Pure Storage, I get to work with a lot of researchers, a lot of data scientists, a lot of heads of R&D, and get to see the applications of how AI is being harnessed. So I've been with Pure for about 6 years now, cut my teeth in healthcare, and have been in both the healthcare side and the working with life sciences organizations. So really happy to be here with you today.
And one quick note, I focus on providers globally. Bill focuses on life sciences globally as well. And so I wanted Bill to join because to give us a view of another industry, a kind of an adjacent industry, and some of the things that they're going on. So we'll first talk about providers, and then we'll move into the other end. Bill and I both don't purport to have a expert view of everything. We just have our perspective and our life's experiences that allow us to draw these conclusions. So we think they're insightful, but we certainly don't, know everything. So looking forward to the chat. Feel free to use the chat and the questions. We'll be monitoring it along the way. If we provide a list and we leave something out that you think is important, go ahead and drop it in and we'll try to include it as we go. So with that, here's the quick agenda. First, we're going to quickly set the context. From our perspective, what are providers actually doing? A lot of talk, but what are people actually doing? And then step back and think about our thinking about AI. It's a little meta, but I find that thinking about the lenses through which we're looking is very important. Also step back, I guess, even further and look at history. If there are some, technology innovations throughout history that might give us some idea of how we might think about AI in healthcare and the maturation process. We're going to touch on probably the most important key leadership imperative during this time that seems to be a perennial challenge. And then, like I said, number 5, we're going to let Bill kind of dig a little deeper on what are the neat things, exciting things, and kind of disruptive innovation things that are going on within the life sciences area, to give an example. And we are seeing a lot of kind of what quote disciplines our markets start to cross, where you had providers, payers, life sciences, pharma. We're seeing a lot from an AI perspective. It's starting to come together quite a bit. So understanding what's going on to an adjacent vertical or sub-vertical is important. And then again, as Bill said, Bill and I got to go to San Jose, California last week, where NVIDIA held their user group conference, a week long, people from literally all over the world. And it really was the World's Fair of AI. And we're going to give you some of our insights and observations from that. So that's where we're going to go, and we're going to definitely keep it on time. But first, 2 quotes. I'm going to share a few models that are useful to me, and I like George Box's quote that models are all wrong, but some are useful, and sometimes they're only useful for a period of time. So I like that one. And the other one, which whenever we're talking about technology and the future, that always comes up, is what's Amara's law, or Bill Gates has a similar quote, but it's basically that when it comes to the impact of technology, we tend to overestimate in the short term and underestimate in the long term. We think the world's going to change substantially in the next 5 years, and it doesn't. But then in the next 20, it changes more than we thought it would. So that's the basic law. I might suggest, I actually put it on this slide for that reason, and then I started thinking about it, and I wonder if this, quote law is actually aging out and might become obsolete. Because one of the observations that Bill and I have is things are moving very fast, and when things move as fast as they're going now, you can't necessarily predict what's going to happen. So I think in prior years, you could look at a technology like the internet or something and think it's going to change the world. But when you don't even know what it's going to do, and it's going to do it to us before we can even think about what the possibilities are, it kind of makes Amara's law obsolete. So 2 quick quotes. So what's going on within AI within the provider space? Just the provider space. I get to talk with quite a few CIOs, CTOs within healthcare, and I made a list of what those use cases are on the left. In general, within healthcare, there's a bifurcation where you're either doing it yourself, which is in very, very few places, maybe a few academic or children's hospitals where they actually have data scientists and they're doing real AI work. But most of us are looking to our software platforms to provide useful tools to have an impact on business outcomes or clinical outcomes. So what are people doing? They're organizing around governance. They're either setting up separate governance from their normal IT governance to handle AI requests. They are making a subcommittee within their existing, or just including it all together with their existing governance. But governance and education are clearly something that executives are spending time on. And then you all know the rest. We've been enabling predictive models within our respective EHRs for a few years now, and there's probably more on the way within enterprise imaging, PACS radiology. We've had, yeah, I think the first diagnostic computer-aided diagnosis tool was probably FDA approved 20 years ago in mammography. So there's over 1,000 FDA algorithms that are helping our clinicians, you know, identify anomalies and prioritize them, point them out, and so forth. Most providers are doing some either a POC or a broader rollout of an ambient listening or generative AI documentation. I first, saw some of the ambient listening stuff about back to the days when voice recognition was taking out transcription, and all the docs wanted it, but only a few were able to use it successfully. I sat next to a neurologist from the Cleveland Clinic at dinner a few months ago, and very capable, competent individual, and this particular POC was taking 2 to 3 hours of documentation that he was doing in the evenings every night. So it had a tremendous impact on his level of burnout or quality of life. And there's some other, I'll call them point solutions, whether there's cameras, sensors being placed in different parts of the healthcare facility to look at gates or predicting falls, things like that. And then robotic process automation, or RPA, kind of get lumped into the AI initiatives, often in the back office or front office, in the revenue cycle, trying to automate some of the repetitive tasks that go on within those areas. So with that, that's just a quick list of what people are doing. If you find that I missed one, go ahead and drop it in the chat. But let me turn it over to Bill to talk about the level of investment that we're actually seeing roll into healthcare for AI.
Thanks, John. Yeah, there's significant. I don't even know significant is the proper word. When you have an annual growth rate year over year of 40%, in terms of the investments in AI in healthcare, that's an astonishing number. But when you see how AI is being applied in healthcare and the real world examples, and how it's improving certain workflows and outcomes, you can see why it's a good investment. So the expectation is by the end of this decade, AI investment in healthcare is going to be up over 170 billion. That's billion with a B. And that applies across all types of healthcare organizations. So there's a lot going on. And I think the other thing that speaks to is obviously healthcare organizations are challenged from a revenue standpoint, and to see them putting this amount of money into AI. And now this doesn't just reflect the healthcare organizations, it reflects the organizations, the vendors that are in the space as well. But when you see healthcare organizations investing the kind of money that they are into AI, that they're getting returns. From an adoption rate, we've got about half of healthcare organizations saying, yeah, we're using AI for inpatient hospital monitoring, but another a total of 85% are planning further investments. So that's indicative of the kind of money that you're seeing being invested in AI. And then more than 70% of respondents are either pursuing or will be pursuing generative AI capabilities. Now, why generative is interesting is generative is using AI algorithms to create new things, not just answering questions. So it's a way to harness AI to say, okay, you already know A and B. Give me some ideas around an option C, and it'll take what it's learned and essentially create for you. So to see healthcare organizations, which have traditionally been, conservative, and life sciences organizations have been conservative as well. I'll talk a little more about that. But when you see them pursuing generative AI, that's a mark that AI is really made its way into the fabric of the organization. And then you've got a solid 20% of healthcare organizations have already adopted AI models for healthcare workflow and outcomes. So headline is a lot has been invested, a lot will continue to be invested, both from a time and a resource standpoint.
And I'll add one more thing. With that much investment coming in, that means that there's all these new companies, like a re-specialization of healthcare IT. And all those people have salespeople that are going to be calling on your organization, trying to make sure, trying to identify whether or not, the problems that you have are ones that they solve. So there'll be more people knocking on your door. I did want to point out one thing on the providers is, and I know many of you have had this experience. Any project that I did within a healthcare organization, it ended up being a data quality, data hygiene, like a data governance project. So often some of the AI initiatives or solutions that are going on, the ones that are focused on new data that they create themselves tend to be a little cleaner. But if you have some type of point solution that leverages the information in the EHR, sometimes those results are not spectacular. I mean, the system was deployed with adoption and patient care and reimbursement in mind, and not necessarily document in such a way to leverage AI in the future. So that's probably one of the biggest challenges is the dirty data, siloed data within the EHR. So back 2.5 years ago when AI kind of got spun up with the Chat GPT, even though we've been doing it for a while, I at that time really just thought it was another technology. Like we've had CPOE, HIEs, cloud, hyperconverged, EHRs, whatever the kind of hyped up technology is for that time. So I literally kind of disregarded, just threw it on the Gartner hype cycle. And I assume most of you are familiar with this, but over my 30+ years in healthcare IT, it seems like this is the way things roll out. It gets introduced, it gets overhyped, then it kind of hits rock bottom, and then at some time in the future we put it kind of where it needs to be, delivering the benefits that it probably was supposed to, in balance with the whole portfolio. So clearly with AI, we're on the front end, and I find individuals, and there's probably there's a spectrum, but either you think it's just another technology to throw on the hype cycle, or you think it's something fundamentally different. And my kind of suggestion is the way you think about that is very important in the way you provide leadership in this area. And again, the beliefs we have tend to influence the lens through which we look. So again, I originally thought just another technology, throw it on a hype cycle, don't get too excited about it. But then did a lot of reading about technology over history, and there are general purpose technologies that tend to follow a somewhat different path. So I'll kind of offer up electricity as an example. And there's been others throughout history, steam power, internet, but electricity is the one that I wanted to kind of use because it's relatively recent. And back in the 1800s, before electricity was used or introduced, if you were to go to a factory, it would predominantly be powered by steam. The steam engine would be in a low floor or the basement, and there'd be several floors on top of it, and there'd be a big belt that would drive throughout the entire building, and then at each floor you would then take the power off that belt and bring the power to workstations on each of those floors. So clearly, whether you're making hats or whatever the output was, the workflow was was driven around the way that steam engine delivered power. As electricity was introduced, and a point solution, or the very first kind of step on the maturation would just be to swap out that big steam engine with a big electrical engine, which probably didn't happen very often, but that'd be an example of it. If you were to slightly reorganize the workflow around the electrical engine, or that would be doing more of an application level. But if you were to rethink the workflow completely with workstations that were powered by individual electrical powered engines, and you organized and you optimize for that, that would be really an example of system level transformation. So, in general, this maturation process of general purpose technology goes through point solutions, to applications, to system level transformation. And I listed a few examples of what those might be. And clearly we're in, somewhere in the point solutions, moving to, more application, broader applications. But if you have time, do spend some time looking at kind of the merger of AI and synthetic biology. This is where things get, very transformative, things that I can't even, predict the full impact. But that's where we're going, and that's where general purpose technologies have evolved over the years. And let me pause there and see if Bill would like to add anything on those two slides.
John, one thing I would like to add is on the AI-driven applications on personalized cancer treatments. I have personal experience with that. When my wife had breast cancer, we were lucky enough to be with the Cleveland Clinic, who was here in Florida, who was able to take her genomic workup and do an analysis of it to see what kinds of treatments she would most likely respond to. It was from just strictly from an academic level, was very, very cool, and from a personal level, very, very life-saving. But it is amazing how the personalized treatment, how far that's come over the past 10 years. That's all.
Thanks, Bill. Well, I mean, that really is the the promise that this actually saves lives, or helps increase the quality of life significantly. So, and it definitely has the potential to do that. So, number 4 was around leadership. From a leadership perspective, what might be some of the imperatives. And throughout my career, we've used, talked about this model, that it's not just the technology. You have people and process changes that need to go along with that project in order to produce the value. And fundamentally, I looking at history, looking at everything, this still applies, and it might even imply or apply even more. So, as leaders, there'll be a general tendency for the crowd to be infatuated with whatever the technology is and want to do it. But it's incumbent on us to fully understand what are those other parts of that intervention, that project, that need to be there in order to realize that outcome, whether it be a business outcome or a clinical outcome. So it, from my perspective, the leadership imperative is really, clarifying the problem that you're trying to solve, or the opportunity that you're trying to enable, and making sure that that intervention has all of the necessary components to create an environment where that outcome can be achieved. And then, as they're deployed, actively working with those levers to ensure that the outcome is achieved. And that's always been, I guess, the plan, or the optimum plan, or the generic plan for our projects, but it still is a challenge. So just admonishing everyone to stick with that. I like this one quote: AI is a tool, it's not a strategy, and leadership defines the problems we're solving. So that's the leadership imperative. And let me pause there and see if there's anything that Bill wanted to add, or questions from the audience.
Nothing for me, John.
Cool. So now we're going to switch gears and talk about what Bill's seen within these life sciences organizations. And again, I wanted to first talk about providers and what we're seeing, and a couple views on important points from our perspective. But now I'd like to have Bill kind of describe some things that are going on in life sciences and pharma, where contrasted with providers, they're not getting their some of their AI applications and platforms from their software vendor. They are developing themselves in-house with scientists, with models, with investing in NVIDIA GPUs, and doing some amazing things in that area. So with that, I'll turn it over to Bill for a few minutes to go through this. And Bill, just let me know when you'd like me to advance slides.
Okay, thanks, John. So I want to put this in some perspective, and I'll start with a quick story about 6 to 7 years ago. I was at a conference, Scope, which is a big pharma conference. And there was somebody there, a director from the FDA, and his entire presentation was virtually pleading with life sciences and specifically pharma executives to begin adopting electronic tools. Up until that point, everything that pharma did, for the most part, data was siloed. It was a lot of times captured pen and paper. It was like the days on the provider side before EHRs were really used from a clinical standpoint. Now, you wouldn't think that was the case with multi-billion-dollar companies, but it was. And when you've seen the growth of electronic tools, including AI, in life sciences, it's been kind of astounding. So as John said, they definitely use trained algorithms. It's part of the package, but they're definitely doing a lot of market leading work. So developing their own proprietary algorithms for drug discovery, for example. That's prevalent now in pharma. And then also what you're seeing is significant investment from an AI standpoint. So we expect by the end of this quarter that there'll be close to 35 billion invested in by pharma companies or life sciences organizations, with an annual growth rate of about 30%. Now, you could see from a healthcare standpoint, from a provider standpoint, there's actually being more invested in healthcare AI than in life sciences AI. So that speaks to the ubiquitousness of healthcare in the U.S. and in North America and globally. But it also speaks to the way that healthcare in the U.S. has quickly caught on with AI and using it to improve outcomes and using it to improve workflows. You'll see with life sciences organizations, you'll see a higher adoption rate of AI because of that pressure from the marketplace, from the FDA, from global organizations to drive the R&D faster. And I'm going to talk a little more about that in a second. The other thing I want to point out is about 75% of life sciences organizations began implementing AI solutions less than 2 years ago. So there's rapid adoption. We have clients with Pure Storage who have purchased from NVIDIA what are called superpods. So think of it as clusters of GPUs that form these really, really, really expansive and expensive, essentially digital brains being used for the computing. And we estimate that more than 93% of life sciences organizations will be making significant investments in data, digital, and AI technologies in this year. So a lot being invested. Now, what are they doing with it? That's what's really interesting. So the first that you would expect is drug discovery and development. It takes anywhere from 7 to 15 years to bring a new drug to market, involving billions of dollars. It also takes many years to wash out a drug, to go through the clinical trials, to spend the money and the effort to only to find out that a drug doesn't work. So the healthcare or life sciences organizations are looking to slash the amount of time and resources it takes to bring a new drug to market, as well as to wash out a drug that is not going to make it. So a lot is going into in silico modeling, computer modeling of compounds, of proteins, of genomes, to try and predict how certain compounds will work and which ones will be most effective. Then you've got clinical trials optimization. So something as simple, quote unquote simple, as finding potential participants for a clinical trial is actually very, very, very hard to do. And one of the things with digital transformation and AI we've been able to find is networking, and some of you may even be part of these networks, but taking de-identified patient data, serving it up to pharma companies and saying, these are the people we have that meet your clinical trial requirements. Would you like them to participate? And it's a way for healthcare organizations to monetize privatized data, as well as for life sciences organizations to be able to track these people much more effectively and quickly and cost effectively than they were able to do before. So bringing those two organizations together, the providers and the pharma companies and life sciences organizations all together, is proving to be very, very effective. So some other things are using it for precision medicine, personalized treatment. I mentioned that earlier. It's being done on both the provider side and the life sciences side. Imaging is typically used as biomarkers by life sciences organizations. It's also being used in research. So you have things like cryo-EM, where they're doing 3D modeling of proteins. Very cool, very, very large file sizes. And that's being used a lot in life sciences organizations. Genomics and bioinformatics has been making use of AI for years now. So you're now able to do genomic sequencing in a couple of hours for a few $100s. So a lot being done there. So it continues to move into manufacturing and supply chain optimization, biomarker discovery, and something called real world evidence, where you're taking data and making sense of it and turning it from real world data, RWD, into real world evidence, RWE. So lots of practical applications of AI. And I think that's the thing that stands out most, is that the life sciences organizations aren't just coming up with esoteric use cases. They're coming up with practical use cases that impact their R&D, impact their operations, everything from marketing to pharmacovigilance. John, can you go to the next slide, please? So how does this benefit life sciences organizations? A lot of this, I think, is kind of commonsensical, but if you can shorten the time it takes to identify and develop new therapies, that benefits everybody, benefits the patients, it benefits providers, but it certainly benefits the pharma companies that may come up with those new therapies. certainly will benefit their bottom line. So being able to get a faster time, faster path to outcomes is really important. I mentioned clinical trial efficacy, being able to speed the patient recruitment and trial design and analysis is huge for ratcheting down costs. Um, Enhanced
Hey,
personalization.
hey, Bill, quick
Yeah,
question to put a little
sure.
color around the acceleration of drug discovery. Do you have
Yeah.
any, kind of pre and post, like, 10 years ago, it would take, 5 years. Now it takes 5 weeks. Just some type of order of magnitude acceleration of drug discovery.
Yeah, I'm blanking on who it is. I think it's Pfizer, but I could be wrong. But it's one of the big ones has literally shaved years. I think it's 3 to 4 years off the amount of time that it takes them to bring a drug to market. So that's can literally be
Right.
measured in billions of dollars. And then when you look at, for instance, uh, improved clinical trial efficiency, if you can get patient recruitment done in months
Yeah.
as opposed to years, and 90% of drug trials do not come off because of lack of appropriate patients for the trial. So when you can actually bring a trial off the ground because you have enough patients to fill the design, that's saving literally millions of dollars a day. So yeah, lots of organizations now are realizing the benefits of using AI. John, you can go to the next slide.
Got it. There you go.
There we go. So what John and I deal in the world of data, working for Pure Storage, and things like data storage actually have a huge impact on the workflows, on the pipelines, and that's a factor created by AI putting new demands on data. Data, you want data to not be siloed anymore. You want to get your arms around all of your data, the types of data you have, where it sits, how it's structured, etc. So from a storage standpoint, you want to be really careful that you have storage that has been developed uniquely for AI and high performance computing workflows. From an infrastructure standpoint, you want to be able to keep those GPUs well fed, and you want them running as efficiently and effectively as possible. So you'd like to have them close to 80-90% usage rates. You don't want those very expensive brains just sitting idly. So keeping them well fed and also doing your work in parallel. You want to be able to have multiple people hitting a system at the same time and not having to do their work in sequentially. The other thing to be aware of is AI requires a lot of energy. So you're seeing data centers that are having to put up new or attach to additional power grids to drive AI work. So be aware of your power consumption and what spinning up additional GPUs can do to that. And then one thing you see a lot on the life sciences side that I think you're going to see more of on the provider side is maintaining flexibility for your infrastructure. On the life sciences side, you saw a lot of organizations go right up to the cloud, especially for computing. The cloud is very convenient. It can also get very expensive. So what we're seeing are more life sciences organizations are repatriating data and repatriating function and moving more of it back to an on-prem kind of hybrid role. So there's a lot of flexibility inherent in the work. So you want to be able to bake flexibility into your infrastructure. Get your vendors to answer you, hey, if we make a change next month, next year, and we go down path X, what does that look like if we work with you? And then part and parcel with that is you're seeing more containerized AI applications, so you can spin up multiple instances of applications for a myriad of users and use cases. So maintain that flexibility as much as you want. Even if a path seems like the golden path, I can tell you that it may not be that way in a year, year and a half, 2 years. So with your data, just maintain your flexibility, look at your storage, be aware of your power consumption, and realize that you're going to have to drive data to those really smart GPUs. John, next slide, please. And I want
Yeah,
to,
I mean,
how are we doing on time?
19 minutes to the top of the hour.
Okay,
So I think we're going to wrap up in the next 5.
yes. So,
Hey, Bill,
yeah,
the next slide is really around practical, steps that you're informing life sciences companies to do
yes,
as they prepare for AI. But I want to just point out one point
sure.
on this slide, and it really is applying to all industries, kind of all workflows within IT. But Bill talked about flexibility in the future, and we use the word agility quite a bit as we look for what do infrastructure type things look like in the future. We're looking for agility, and agility means that you don't make big bets and get locked in, that you can, it's beyond investment protection. It's that you can go in a fundamentally different direction and not pay some penalty because you made the wrong bet. So we're seeing the desire for IT agility to enable organizational agility across all industries.
Great point. Okay, so I'm not going to go through each one of these, but what we see on the life sciences side is they're taking a fairly structured approach to AI. So they're starting, and these are literally discussions we're having with clients. Tell us about your data. What do you have? Where is it? What's accessible? How is it accessible? How how liquid can you make it? What are your storage options? I'll give you a for instance. When working with genomic data, you have to make sure you have a storage option that handles really large files and really small files equally well at the same time, because data that comes off the sequencers comes off as one big file, one very large file comprised of hundreds of thousands to really small files. So be aware of just even how you're storing your data. What kind of flexibility do you have? Really look at data security and governance. Who can touch what files? Who's done what file? Done what with what files? What are your audit trails? Those kinds of things. And then data checkups and backup, having replication of your data, protecting your data from bad actors and from just people internally who may make mistakes. So you've got the discussions about your data, then looking at going from your idea to POC. So what's the use case? Don't even talk technology yet. What's the use case? What's the business problem or the clinical problem you're trying to solve? And whenever possible, make it as multidisciplinary as possible. We see the most momentum gathered when you have IT working with the lines of business owners. So the heads of research, the heads of bioinformatics, heads of data science, when you can have the people who are doing the work talk to the people who are making the work possible, really good things happen. And they come up with things like what's the success of a POC? What are the data requirements? Creating your RAG model that's uh, taking data that's available outside your organization and merging it, well, not merging it with, but combining it with data that you have inside the organization to create new models. And then integrating that with large language models, which AI does really well. And then, as always, you want to validate the POC against your success criteria, what worked, what didn't work, and then make adjustments and move into a full enterprise-wide rollout of the algorithm or whatever your AI work entails. So, John, that's all I had on that slide.
Okay.
This is something that John and I talk. John is really good, as you can sense, about um, being able to talk about transitions in technology and what it does to organizations. So this is something that we talk about, which is in the traditional enterprise, almost pre-AI. The employee is the primary actor. So the employee is responsible for generating, consolidating, making sense of information, and then applying that to the business or the clinical process. So in that sense, the linchpin on it is the person. In an AI enabled in enterprise, software becomes the primary actor, and the model is driving the intelligence and the recommendations for the action. So the data is responsible for generating the code as opposed to the developer. So it leads to very, very fast, I should say, the ability to change very, very fast and make changes very quickly. Next one, John. So GTC. I'll start off, especially with those little robots. We went to GTC last year, and I think last year was much more about the promise of AI, and you saw more cute little robots, um, including robot dogs and robot bartenders. This year, I saw fewer cute robots and more practical applications of AI. More, here's what AI is going to do for your business, for your enterprise. And there are two sectors where that is most prevalent. Healthcare, life sciences, NVIDIA considers a sector, and a lot of businesses do as well. And then financial services. So the promise of AI is really centered, a lot of organizations making bets on healthcare and life sciences. So I think that bodes really, really well for healthcare organizations to be able to get the tools that they need and be able to get them cost efficiently and get them in a manner that they want them, whether it's in the cloud, on-prem, or some form of hybrid. But yeah, the biggest thing I saw were practical applications of AI this year.
And so this was my first time going. I had a little visibility into it last year, but really this year, full immersion experience. And as a Missouri boy flying into San Jose Airport and then going over the convention center, 25,000 people in person, 30,000 virtually. Picture something as big as HIMSS, but in a space that's probably 2/3 less than HIMSS. It was packed. Every hallway, every little ante room, the exhibit floor, tons of people from all around the world. I mean, in our booth, we were talking to people from Turkey, Singapore, Taiwan, South America, Europe. It really was a World's Fair focused on AI. And I think what two kind of takeaways. One, I go back to that leadership imperative is, what problem are you solving, and what are the other kind of non-technical parts that are necessary to solve it. So the technology works, some amazing things. And I think at a macro level, we're seeing some of that maturation that we talked about earlier about general purpose or technology, is where last year it was about, the GPUs had, this throughput or instructions per second. It was about the hardware. This year, it's a lot more about the applications, what use cases, and about scaling up. So just kind of the speeds and feeds around the hardware last year, but now we're seeing it, practical applications and roadmaps for scaling this up immensely. So, in the next, few years, you're going to see some of the largest corporations build the world's largest AI factories. I'm not even sure what an AI factory is, but it requires a tremendous amount of power, GPUs, storage, data. So we're going to see, and again, going back to kind of that acceleration of change, I think, we've seen it just in the past year with what, was presented last year and where things are going this year. Last year there was, much smaller certifications with NVIDIA around base pods. Now there's super pods, so you can build, these massive AI factories to do work, to do more work and to do it faster. So with that, I think we have a few minutes till the top of the hour, and Bill and I can stop talking and check with Brandy and Cindy, see if there's any questions that we can answer.
As of right now, there aren't any questions actually within either the chat or Q&A section. So with that, there was a question, however, asking about availability, which Brandy did respond to in the chat. But so that everyone is aware, in case you haven't seen it, slides are available upon request. So please email us for that. And otherwise, we will be making the recording available within the week on our YouTube channel. And try to.
If anyone would like to ask their question directly, feel free to raise your hand as well and open you up.
Hey, Bill, I thought the robots were pretty cool, but I didn't see them last year.
I'm a big robot fan, especially ones with cute eyes like you're showing here. Although it did make me nervous when I saw the robot bartender crush a martini glass. So
there were more humanoid robots walking around kind of independently. They're just walking through the hallway, and you could stand in front of them and say hi, shake their hand. It was a little bizarre.
Well, definitely seems like a conference that would be worth checking out if ever available to do so for anyone. But with that, I know that lots of great information was shared today, lots of key points. Some of the ones I know that I took away was making sure that you're removing your data silos if you're looking to move it into leveraging AI more efficiently. And then also thinking about a hybrid model for both on-prem and in the cloud for due to usage and consumption costs. So appreciate all the insights that were given today. And thank you again, both John and Bill from Pure Storage. And with that, that does conclude our talk for today. And appreciate everyone who joined us live today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.